Whether you love them or hate them, I think we can all agree it'd be nice to change up High Elves from time to time. Hello everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. And yes, you heard me right, we are talking about High Elves today. But before we get into the details of what exactly I have on offer for you, if you're new here to the channel, then go on down there, hit that subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. Or, if you've already listed yourself on such a legendary roster, then go on down to hit that like button and share the video far and wide. But now, let's talk about what I have in mind here for changing up these cultures. So, for High Elves, I mean, it's pretty solidly set in stone what they're like. You know, tall, inhumanly graceful, just have that otherworldly etherealness to them. They are slim of build, slight of frame, live in heavily wooded areas. They tend to live in tune with nature, or if they're not in tune with it, they have a great mastery over it and maintain it with almost a very reverent like stewardship over the territories that they hold dear and close to them. And they're great, incredible archers, astoundingly good mages, very insightful, but very, very arrogant, or at least seemingly arrogant to younger races like humans or even dwarves. Part of this is just because of how long-lived they are. I mean, elves can reach around about 1,000, and depending on setting, there may be some immortal elves that have lived for millennia. And so, while they may come off as arrogant, that arrogance is largely due to the simple fact that they've been around. They've seen a lot. They've seen how a lot of things tend to play out. So, from a statistical viewpoint, something that might seem cataclysmic to humans, an elf would go, okay, we're doing this again. Alright, well, we know what to do. No need to get worried here. Apparently, I can't crack my fingers right now. That was sad. But I'm getting off track. So, elves have been around, or at least typically have been around, and know what to do in an emergency. And because elves live for about 1,000 years, you know, they could have great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren around that are looking to them for guidance. So there's definitely this whole idea of looking up to your elders in a very much literal sense for this kind of a culture. So what are some cultures that place a significant amount of emphasis on looking to leadership from your elders, your ancestors, long-lived, long-lasting cultures, and cultures that have just a certain level of mastery of the world around them, or if not of the world around them, at least a mastery over themselves? Well, I've got two on my mind currently. One is the Zhou Dynasty of China. The Zhou Dynasty is the longest lasting dynasty, if I remember correctly. It lasted about, I want to say, 800 years or so. And this is a period that I think a lot of us end up thinking about for ancient China. If not the Zhou Dynasty, then the Three Dynasties period, also what we call the Three Kingdoms period. The Zhou Dynasty is where we find Confucius, Sun Tzu, Taoism, different kinds of philosophies that really come to the forefront as coinage becomes a much more widely practiced thing, and Chinese language and letters become much more codified, and Chinese culture really finds its roots and foundations at this point. There were previous dynasties, but this is where things really kick off and start to snowball and roll forwards. This is also a culture that has a very advanced calendar and technological systems that are in place, and they make some incredible advancements here. And the calendar portion's key, because there's one other thing with High Elves that I had forgotten to bring up earlier, and that's the sun and moon worship that they're typically depicted as having. And given that the Chinese had a very advanced calendar, this all syncs up very nicely. I mean, the architecture, the absolutely wondrous architecture that the Chinese built, just that beautiful, distinct array of how they would put together their buildings, and just even the tiling for the roofs, how the layouts would play out, and then just the sheer array of colors that they would bedeck everything with that they possibly could. And absolutely gorgeous and stunning through and through. And then also there's the fact that there's a great martial tradition with the Chinese as well. Chinese swordsmanship, Chinese the Kung Fu, the Shaolin monasteries, all of these different martial systems that were in place. And it's absolutely fantastic. And China is such a big area that you can find a fairly diverse array of cultures, even with the larger homogenous culture that may be present there. So there's a lot that you could do and play with if you were to model your High Elves after the Chinese. You could, specifically the Chinese of the Zhou Dynasty. There's Confucianism, Confucian philosophy definitely has a very patriarchal kind of orientation and mindset, where you're looking to the emperor, to that paternal father figure, that paternal leadership figure who is going to guide you through these hard times and also bring you to joyous times and lead you with this wisdom and this gentle, firm, martial strength that they were believed to be able to bring to bear. So all of that fits together because the younger elves looking up to those older, wiser, more experienced elves. You can drop the patriarchal part if that certainly suits you. Certainly, I like to change things up and switch things around, but you can still see how there's a certain thread of logic that runs through all of that, and enough similarities there that you could make something distinct, unique, and interesting for your campaigns. Now, the other culture I have in mind, it's actually two separate ones, but from similar regions, and that's the Mayans and the Incans. The Empire of the Maya and the Inca, these were absolutely fabulous empires that were built, and lots of lots of beautiful stonework in the architecture, and just the sheer level of mathematics and effort that would have to go into constructing all of these wondrous things. But in particular with the Maya is their understanding of how the different celestial bodies move, the different planets, the moons, when eclipses would happen, the movement and patterns of the different constellations that they would use to interpret the will of the gods. Certainly Maya culture was built around that to a significant degree, and later on, towards the end of the Maya civilization, the head priests there, as far as we understand it, used a lot of their knowledge of the movement of these different astrological bodies to pass themselves off as soothsayers, seers and the like, people with mystical abilities to be able to read and divine the future. And they'd be able to time out these complex ceremonies with these different eclipses happening, or the movement of Venus and the like. So lots of interesting things that they could do there. Also, how cool are the jaguar warriors or the eagle warriors? Those headdresses that they'd put together with the different eagle feathers, or wearing the pelts of different jaguars. Just these elite, capable warriors, and definitely capable in up-close combat as well. And given how heavily forested and how heavily overgrown the underbrush could be for these different jungle regions that these countries lived in within Central and South America, definitely a big emphasis on up-close fighting and less with the bow and arrow. I mean, certainly they had the atlatl, would be able to throw longer darts for a good range, but nothing so significant as, say, you would need a bow for necessarily. So definitely a lot of interesting possibilities here. Also, I should mention just how big the scope of architecture was, and not only that, but the evidence that suggests that these different cities were massively, very well kept, maintained, and cleaned, especially in comparison to European cities when the Spanish conquistadors came over. There's a stark difference in not only how similar the population densities were, but just the cleanliness in comparison to one another, despite the similar densities that might have been present. So definitely a wide array of things to put together there. For the Maya and the Incans, it's definitely a bit more on the cosmetic side, but there's still plenty to make use of there. I mean, these were rich, full cultures that we still have a somewhat reasonable understanding of. Less so, what with the Spanish conquest of the region, but still, lots and lots to work with there. Even within the realm of mystery, you can still use that to kind of fill in these different gaps and try to create something, again, new, unique, and distinct that'll help set apart your campaign world from so many others that your players might have enjoyed in the past. But what do you think? Go on down to the comments below and let me know your thoughts. Did you like today's video? Did you dislike it? Hit those like or dislike buttons and engage me down in the comments below, and we'll have a good discussion over this. And remember, if you're new here to the channel, then go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. But with all that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Thank you all so very much for your time, and you all have yourselves a good night.